What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. I got my cat down here that's probably about to jump up here really quick. I just wanted to take today and just talk about what it took for me to open up my business when I bought my building and how much money it costed me to get all that stuff up and running. I think that a lot of times people, and especially for me, and this is what was told for me when I first started building, is whatever you project your cost to be, you need to definitely add on at least 20% on to whatever you feel like it's going to cost. And for me, it was actually more than 20%, but I don't remember exactly what my financial plan was. This was my first time actually going into something and kind of building out my own stuff. I didn't anticipate a lot of that stuff that happened, and I'm just gonna kind of go through the numbers a little bit on how much it cost me to build out the place and make it into a restaurant. So when I first bought the building, it was an office travel agency, and their parking lot was really in rough shape. And the city, what happens is you have to go to the common council, right? And my deal for buying this building was contingent on the city being okay with me turning it into a restaurant, right? If they don't give the okay, then the deal just doesn't go through. So I went to the common council and they say, hey, Trav, we'll let you turn it into a restaurant, but these are the things that we want you to do. And they're, the parking lot's in really bad shape. We want you to fix the parking lot. If you're renovating the building, we want you to put some shrubbery and some greenery outside. Some of this stuff they're actually kind of ridiculous about, but, they forced me to come in there and actually make the curb appeal. It makes sense on what they're trying to do, but at the same time, I think it's kind of lame, some of the stuff that they're asking for me to do. I remember there was, I've got a really big parking lot, and then I've got the building, and it was actually it was surveyed to be two parcels, right? And they said, hey, we want you to clean it up, get your land surveyed, and make it into one parcel, and it's just stuff like that it's like, it's an extra $1,000 that you got to sit there and you got to submit this into the city, and then, it just makes it easier for tax purposes and everything like that. So, the first year that I owned the place, I technically had two tax bills, one for the parking lot, one for the building. But when I first took over, I didn't realize the parking lot. I realized that it was in really rough shape, but I didn't realize how much it was going to cost me. And there was like there were certain parts of the parking lot that were a lot worse than others, and that was kind of like when I brought the pavement people in to take a look at the parking lot to see how much it was going to cost. It was like 10 grand or like 20 grand, I think it was, for them to come in there and do all these like cut this section out and pave it. And then I said, well, how much would it cost if I were to just redo the entire parking lot? And that turned out to be about $45,000. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this stuff, and it's like, hey, this is going to be my building. I'm going to be here for many, many, many years to come. Let's just redo it. So I spent $45,000. That was the first thing that I did when I went in there. And this is where it kind of gets a little kind of trippy to me, and where I don't understand a lot with the city and everything, is that you have to constantly pay for permits, and you have to pay for fees. And you have to go to the city and you have to pay a permit, to get them to okay for you to do the parking lot. It's crazy, man. They just want money in order to like pay the people that are coming in there and reviewing the plans and making sure that everything's okay, and then they come back out and they want to know how much pavement is getting taken out and how much the pavement is coming back in. And I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, I don't think that there should be fees that come along with that. If you want to just say, hey, for you to start doing a business remodel of your place and everything, if you want to say, hey, there's a one-time fee for that, I get it. Let's do that. But, to come by and get, constantly permitted and feed on a lot of this stuff, I don't understand. I just actually had to renew my my business occupancy for one of my places, and they asked me in a follow-up email. They said, hey, how did this process go? And I said, hey, the process went fine, but I don't agree with having to pay for business occupancy every single year for me just to stay inside of this place. I'm already paying taxes on this place. I'm already paying rent on this place. Why am I paying the city on top of this as a business to just maintain occupancy in a place that doesn't even belong to the fucking city? I don't understand. You know, for me as a business, I have to pay, you know, for my food license every single year. The business occupancy just doesn't really make too much sense to me. So it's just stuff like that that just kind of got a little it gets a little redundant for me. I can't remember exactly what the name of it was, but there was also a thing that they did every single year. It was a tax on all of your fixtures and all of the things that were inside of your business, you know, that were not, you know, food related. And you would get taxed on that every single year. Every year. So when you buy the things, you get taxed. And then every single year on top of that, you would have to report to the city, hey, this is how much I think that the inside of my building is worth in, you know, drywall, lighting, plumbing, you know, desks, tables, chairs. This is how much I think is inside of my building. And then you would have to get taxed on that. And in Wisconsin, you know, this is the one thing I agree that Tony Evers did for us over here, but he got rid of it, you know. So I think maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, he got rid of the, man, I think it was just called a personal property tax. I think personal property. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. But he got rid of that, and you know, I'm super grateful that he did, you know, because to pay infinite tax on something, I think it just blows my brain. So I'm happy that they got rid of this. I'm getting on a tangent here, but I think this is why my employees don't like talking to me, man. Sometimes I think I got like undiagnosed ADHD or something. So, but getting into the rest of the building, you know, process and how much it costed me, and you know, I know that like getting the couple of hoods set up in there, and you got to have makeup air units for all the air that's going out. You have to have enough, you know, equal, you know, air coming back into the restaurant. That cost me $25,000, you know, and that's, you know, them coming in there and doing all the roof work, you know, putting all your stuff in. I'm pretty sure that the flooring, just getting the tile done, was at least $8,000. I want to say it was probably close to 10. It's been a number of years since I've even gone through all this stuff. I think it was like 10,000. I think it was like 8,000 to do that, and then 2,000 to buy all the tiles for the flooring. I know that the plumbing was at least $25,000. I know that the electrical was at least $25,000 just to come in there and do that. You know, things like buying a walk-in cooler, you know, buying a brand new walk-in cooler that was just kind of set up, installed, ready to go as soon as, you know, that was at least $10,000. I want to say that it was actually a little bit more than that. And, you know, just putting in the sinks, you know, buying a brand new dishwasher down there, you know, there was just like an accumulation of things that it just started adding more and more and more onto this stuff. And, you know, I did a large chunk of the demo work to go in there and do all that stuff. And, you know, the demo aspect of things, I was in charge of, you know, all of that. But I hired a guy. He's actually a really nice guy. I hired a guy that went in there and he built up, you know, everything for me. He built up, you know, the ceiling tile grid, put up all my walls, put up all my drywalls, you know, anything that needed to be done. Like, I bought a brand new pizza oven. You know, that brand new pizza oven, I want to say was $20,000. And that's for that company to come out there and build it from the ground up. And that's a rotating pizza oven that we have. And it's actually pretty cool for the insulation on the walls. They use crushed up seashells, you know, and apparently that's really good insulation to maintain all that heat on the inside of that oven. But back behind that, this is a part of like what the building, you know, permits and all that stuff kind of get you is, you know, you get the building inspector in there, and during each process, hey, before you can move on, you know, we need to come in there and inspect what you're doing first to make sure that it's okay. And back behind any of the fryers, any of the stove, any of the pizza oven, you know, you have to have metal support beams. You know, it can't be wood 2x4s, right? You know, it's got to be, you know, metal 2x4s that just Durarock, you know, a specific type of insulation, you know, that's back behind there. And, you know, all that stuff just costed, you know, I want to say for all the work that he did, and, you know, this is where it's kind of a little tricky for me to understand how much I paid this guy's name is Ron to do all this build out work, is because, you know, he just bid out each job as we went. That's the way that I kind of wanted to do it. You know, I just didn't want to sit there and have him say, okay, I'll do it for $75,000, and then 2/3 of the way through the project, he's like, oh, you know what? It's going to cost me another 10 grand. I didn't want to do it that way. So each step of the way, it's just, you know, he bid out a job, I approved it, you know, so on and so forth. But I want to say that when he sent me his final, you know, invoice, you know, I still paid him along the way. It was like $85,000 that I paid this guy to come in there and just build, you know, all this stuff out. And, you know, you talk about just a tedious process. I mean, like 6 months, 6 months for me was like grueling. It was really hard for me to go through all that stuff, man. Like, I bought the place in September of 2018. And actually it was, yeah, September of 2018. And the more I think about it, the more, like, I think we were in there in June. So it was actually about 8 or 9 months that it took us to get in there. But, like, for me, that was a long time, you know. And this is where I think people don't really fully understand. Like, when you have somebody coming in there and building all this stuff for you, it's so hard, man. It's so hard because it's like these contractors, like, you're not the only person, right? You know, you're not the only person that's that these contractors are working for. You know, like, they got one other person, or when they're close to finishing up your project, you know, they're already out there trying to bid another project, and, you know, you're in your brain, you're like a couple weeks out, but to them, they're like, okay, I gotta get, you know, my money, so I have to find the next project. So that's where a lot of, like, the delays came in. A lot of the stuff, like, came in too, man, that, like, it was just really, like, difficult on me mentally, dude, where it was like, okay, Ron and his buddies would tell me, like, yeah, hey, I'll be down there on Wednesday. And I'm like, cool, dude, you know, we're finally going to get this shit done. And, you know, I'm going to be able to call the inspector to come in there and all this shit. And, you know, next thing you know, I show up on there on Wednesday, and, like, nobody's down there working, you know. And so now I'm calling them up, and, oh, yeah, hey, we got delayed on this other project. I'm sorry, we can't stop by there until Friday. And I know it's not just me that goes through that kind of stuff. Like, I know it's a lot of people that have work done on their houses, on their buildings, on their properties, businesses, whatever, that it just kind of, it delays, right? So I know for sure that I bought the place in September. I want to say that I really started trying to work on, you know, building the place out in October. I'm sorry, like, demoing the place out in October. And then I know that, you know, we came by and we moved in there right around, like, June. I'm pretty sure it was June. Might have been like May or something, but it took us about, you know, 7, 8, 9 months to get everything, you know, up and going. But I'm actually going to include in this video too. I know I've got a video still of when I first bought the building, and I just went in there and I just took a recording of me just walking around the office building, and maybe I'll include some photos of, you know, what the place was. And in between all the, you know, I've got pictures of when the plumbers came in there and ripped out the floor to put in all the pipes. And, you know, I've got, you know, pictures along the way there too that, but I mean, all that stuff in hindsight too, like, I wouldn't change it. You know, I'm glad that I went through all that stuff. Like, I learned so much, you know, off of doing that stuff. And I'm super grateful that I did it. You know, all that stuff, you know, that's the nice thing too, is, like, all that stuff that I spent on, you know, the plumbing and the electric and the electrical. Doesn't he look weird, man? He's such a good cat. All that stuff that I paid, you wind up getting that stuff back in depreciation, right? So that was kind of nice, that next tax year, getting a lot of that stuff deducted and all that depreciation towards that stuff. And, that first year I got a pretty healthy, tax return back too, which really helped. That was, I'm not saying that it was scary, but it was kind of scary that like when I was building this place out, like I had everything that I owned into this place. I didn't buy the building through a bank. My mom's boyfriend allowed me to borrow the $220,000 that I needed for this place, and then I just slowly paid him back. Like he played the role of the bank, and so I had that up. I had all that money that I was spending to build the place out, and I remember I was buying, the last kind of things that I was buying to get the place up and running. It was like the sinks and the dishwasher, and there were some other few odds and ends that I was building, that I was buying, and I had the majority of the stuff that I needed from the other place, right? We were just kind of waiting on that one day to move everything over there, and I remember I had to open up a credit card, and I just found the credit card, that would give me the most money that I could possibly have. And I bought an 18-month, found an 18-month 0 APR so that I could sit there, and I had to put those sinks in that dishwasher, whatever it was. I mean, it was like $8,000 or something like that I paid for all that stuff. And I put all that stuff on that credit card, and like I just had enough money in my bank account that I knew that it's crazy, man. There's some days that I could like look at my bank account, and it's like because my main food distributor, I just have them take out an ACH once a month. Just makes it a lot easier on me. And there's some times that they'll take out $30,000. People will get paid that same week, and there'll be one week that $50,000 just gets taken out of my checking account. It's pretty crazy, man. But I'm not complaining or anything. That's just a part of doing business, right? That's just the way that I have it set up. But I just had like just enough in my bank account to just know that like, okay, people are gonna get paid. If things really start hitting the fan, then I can like, really, I got something that I can lean back on. And worst case, like I think I could ask my mom's boyfriend for like a little bit of money there too. But yeah, that was scary, man. That I had everything invested into this place, and like I wasn't gonna fail. Like that, there was no part of me that was sitting there thinking to myself that I was gonna let this stuff kind of dwindle down and fail. Like, I was gonna succeed no matter what. And it was a profitable, it was a profitable business. And I mean, I don't want to sit there and say like lucky for me, but seriously, like lucky for me, COVID actually helped our business out. A lot of, during COVID, a lot of the dining establishments, they're the ones that really struggled and really kind of just went through it. And, for us, we were just a carry out and delivery business. So, I mean, that's what we knew how to do. So like when COVID came, it was like that next year and a half, 2 years, I mean, our sales, like, I don't think that we will ever see. I think that was like our peak. That's whatever we did during that time, during, that year and a half, 2 years between 2020 and 2021. I think that that's just what it was, man. I mean, everybody just having to be stuck at home. And I think it's absolutely insane that we closed everything down. I think it still just blows my brain that we just shut down the world. And don't even get me started on these triple P programs, I can't even remember what they stand for, anymore, but, protection program. We just gave money to people, man. And like they did 2 rounds of these PPPs, and I mean, they just printed money to people, man. And like now everybody's having to pay that stuff back. I mean, billions of dollars, to people. And like that first round that they sent out, like people that didn't even need it were taking this stuff. It was just absolutely crazy. And somehow, some way, I don't know exactly how people got incentivized for it. My accountant was trying to push for me to go out and get this PPP. The guy that manages my bank, was trying to get me to come by and do this PPP. And, I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm like, are these motherfuckers getting incentivized for, finding people to do this stuff? And it was just kind of crazy how everything happened, man. But yeah, I'm just grateful that all that stuff worked out. And, I know that it was, that was the sickest I ever got was when I got COVID, right? I'm not dismissing how serious it was, but to fucking shut everything down, I mean, holy mother of fuck, are you serious? That's just so crazy to me, man. So crazy. And, my mom at that time, was still around and she was still living and she had COPD, right? So like, I was super careful. I didn't see my mom for a certain number of time. Like I got vaccinated the first, couple shots that came out. And if it wasn't for my mom, I wouldn't have gotten vaccinated. I would have just been, living life, right? But for her and to be able to go and spend some time with her, because I knew she was on her way out, pretty soon thereafter too. So, I just wanted to make sure that I just got to spend some time with her. But yeah, that's the gist of it, man. That's how much money I spent on all that stuff. I want to say that it was definitely $300,000 for sure. I think it was more than that I had to spend, just on getting all that stuff together. I had to put a lot of that stuff on credit cards and, I just at that time as well, it was just really good timing that, I was like just selling my house and, I had some extra cash from selling my house and, then I had the mortgage payment for this house so that, everything it just kind of worked out. God took care of me. So I'm super grateful. But yeah, like I said, at the end of this video, I'm going to include the video of me walking around that office setting so that you guys can just kind of see what the place looked like before that. Maybe I'll throw in some photos too. I might have to dig deep into the archives to show you guys what the place kind of looked like during the construction process. I wish I would have documented that, for the YouTube channel and everything too. I think that would have been pretty dope. But yeah, I mean, if you're going into something like this, I think just be prepared for hiccups, be prepared for delays, be prepared to spend more money than you're actually thinking. Over guess, what you think you're going to be spending on all this stuff, man, and just have realistic expectations. I just want to throw in there too that like it just kind of depends on like the city inspector on who you're working with. That, if they're nice or not. And there was the plumbing inspector that was really fucking cool. I mean, I think he just got it, and it was like he just went in there and yeah, hey, everything looks good, and like those inspectors, man, like I know that they're kind of a hassle and they're a pain in the ass, but like there's a lot of fucking contractors out there too, man, that are just trying to do half-ass work and take advantage of you and like, not do their best job and all that shit. So like those inspectors are there to protect you as well too, man, not just make your life, a living fucking hell. So, I understand why they're there. It's just like when some inspectors got a fucking stick up their ass, that's when it kind of got a little annoying. But the electrical inspector was pretty cool. The building inspector is the one that really kind of gave me some problems, and I knew jumping into it. Somebody was telling me, I can't remember who I was talking to, but they said, hey man, if you get Bob Johnson, watch the fuck out. And sure enough, I get my little sheet and these are all the inspectors I got to work with. Bob Johnson, and man, that fucker, man. I mean, they approved my, yeah, here we go. Now I'm going on another fucking tangent, right? That's what we're here for though. But I got my outside parking lot. I took the plans of the parking lot, for the parking lot to the city and somebody approved it, and you got to show them where you're going to, draw your, handicap spots and how many parking spots you're going to have and all this shit. And, they got the catch basin, that I've got right there. And I got the parking lot done, striped. Building inspector comes in to come check something out, walks outside, walks back in. He's like, hey, just so you know too, like, your parking lot's not striped correctly. Like, you can't have a handicap spot right next to the catch basin. Hey, makes fucking sense. But bro, you guys approved the plans. What are you talking about? Like, we have approved plans. You know what the fucker did? He looked at me and he showed me the stamp. And he said, let me just show you something. This guy was doing this for like 30 years or something. He said, let me show you a word on this stamp. He says, you see this word right here? It says unconditionally. He says, that's how we get you. It says unconditionally approved. And I'm like, you motherfucker, dude. So I had to spend $800 to get them to come back up and to black out that little section and redo it so that, like, now it's like a handicap, open parking space, another handicap, so that catch basin, and like, hey, I get it. People in a wheelchair, like, they can't get stuck in there. But motherfucker, pay attention then when you're doing my fucking plans. Don't make me pay for that shit. Like, you guys fucking pay for that shit. That's lame. Another thing that happened is he was looking at the plans and he says, hey, did you put footings underneath your front door when you had the parking lot done? I said, no. Okay, well, you got to have footings underneath there. What if there's a hard frost and, things freeze and settle and like customers can't get out of the front door? I said, you guys approved the plans. You guys approved the plan. There's nothing in here about footings. Yeah, okay. Well, I had to spend $2,000 to have my guy Ron come over there and bust all that shit up. Put the footings in there, put the fucking rebar, and like the guy was on vacation, I think, for a week, and we wanted to pour the concrete footings, but we need to have them come out there and check the rebar, right? It's part of the process. So we're calling them, and somebody from the city is like, nah, I mean, just pour it. Just pour it. So this motherfucker comes back out there, and he's like, I thought that he was going to make us rip it up again so that he could see that I swear he was going to do it. And like my buddy Ron was like, hey, we called this person. This is who we talked to. They said that we can just pour it. So I had to spend an extra $2,800 off this stuff. And, it was like I had everything lined up. I was ready to move in. I had all the dates. I had this guy that bought pizza from me that owned a moving company. He was set to come on Monday. This is the day that we're going to move everything. And, I got ATT coming over, and they're going to switch over the phone lines that Monday. I got it set in stone. Like, this is the fucking day. And there was like Donovan and Jorgensen, the heating and air conditioning people that were coming out there. And that was actually another, $10,000, whatever it was. I think it was $15,000. I had a couple of mini splits put into the building, which actually do a lot. If we didn't have those mini splits, we'd be sweating our asses off in there. But there's a part of, what they have to do as well. Donovan and Jorgensen, for the heating and cooling, they have to kind of figure things out so that, like, when the doors open, they don't stick. And, they have to figure out for all the air that's coming in, it's got to be equal coming out. And it was Friday. And he was this guy, Bob Johnson. I'm sitting there with this fucker on Friday. And I'm like, he's not going to sign off on this, dude. I know it. I fucking know it, dude. And I was stressing out. I'm like, I'm going to have to push this shit back, dude. Like, this is fucking lame. And I'm sitting there and it's like, man, I cannot believe that this guy's going to trip me up. And I'm just trying to breathe through all this stuff. And I'm remembering all my sobriety sayings and like, whatever you want, God, is what I want. And I will be done, not mine. And I'm sitting there with them, and he's like, okay, so these guys said, that they can come back. Donovan and Jorgensen can come back on Monday and do this stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's where we're at. And he's like, you know what? I've been doing this stuff a long time. I don't sign off on this stuff usually, unless all of this stuff is intact and, I get to see it. He's like, I've been burned on this stuff before, where I sign off on it prematurely and then people don't do what they're supposed to do. He's like, I'm actively like in court right now with somebody. I can't share the name of the person, but I'm actively in court with this person, and we'll see how that pans out. He's like, but, for you, Trav, he's like, I'm going to do it. And, this is kind of where, like, I think that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has helped me out so much, man, that, and this meant a lot to me, that, he was a really hard guy to work with, but, and this is where I said to him too, that like, hey man, Bob, like I get it, like you're in here, just looking out for me, you're looking out for me and you're making sure that these guys are doing their job correctly and not just, scooting through it real fast and then moving on to the next thing. And like, I had, a different angle than I think what other people kind of look at this stuff. And don't get me wrong, I was still looking at him like he was a motherfucker, for a lot of the stuff that he put us through. But I think he was just so, kind of like taken aback by like that comment. And he's like, man, Travis, I tell you, I've been doing this shit for a long time. He's like, you are the greatest person that I've ever worked with. And that meant a lot to me, man. He's like, I've been doing this shit for so long, and like every step of the way, like, you just kind of went through with everything, and like there was no fight and there was no, talking back, and you were just super understanding and like good spirits. And I just felt like that shit was just like probably one of the greatest compliments that I've ever gotten, because it's like going back to when my first, general manager, not general manager, but there was a guy that had left when I first took over the business. And this was like in my heart of like being a dry drunk where I wasn't going to meetings and I wasn't working on myself and all this stuff. And when he left, like I was a tyrant, and I would just throw things and I'd say things, just anything that came into my brain, I just spouted out of my mouth. There was no thought if I was going to hurt you or if I was going to do harm to you. And I suffer from what I call foot and mouth disease a lot of times, right? I put my foot in my mouth a lot of times. And, I remember this guy left for a little bit and he wound up coming back and getting a job with me again. And this was probably like 2-3 years later. I was in the program now and I was actively working the steps and working with like a sponsor and all this shit. And he took me off to the side after he came back and started working for me. And I'm thinking to myself like, shit, this guy's going to quit. He just came back, I really need him. And takes me off to the side and says, Travis, I got to ask you something, man. Like, what happened to you? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, you're not screaming, you're not yelling, you're not throwing things. You're smiling, you're laughing, you're complimenting people. He's like, I don't even recognize you. And it's just stuff like that really stands out to me, that just tells me like the program for me of Alcoholics Anonymous really works, man. And like it just has made me just look at like shortcomings and character defects and think like I don't have to do this, and like think before I do, and to like pause, be present, then proceed, pray if I need to, shit like that. I heard that in a meeting today. Pause, pray, proceed, just ask for guidance. And sometimes prayer is just as simple as just talking to somebody from the program, a sponsor, going to a meeting, looking up at the sky, shit like that. So, but yeah, hearing that from Bob, that was kind of a cool thing, man. I think we kind of had like a mutual kind of understanding after that. So I know for sure that the general contracting side of things was actually, it was kind of fun for me. I just didn't appreciate, a lot of the delays and, trying to find people to come in there and do the stuff and just try and stay up on top of things. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I'm glad that it happened. Like I said, I learned a lot, and yeah, I'm done talking, man. I've been talking for a long time. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. If you're looking to go out there and start opening up a place, feel free, send a comment. I'm sure that I can, answer some questions there for you or do the best that I can. I think that that's kind of what like my life is kind of now, is just I try and help out as many people as possible. What am I stroking out? I try to help out as many people as possible. That is kind of a tongue twister, by the way. But, yeah, I just try to help out people, and it gets me away from self, you know, for sure. So I'm super grateful that I'm able to do that stuff. And yeah, I'm gonna throw in that video of me showing you guys what the place looked like before I built it out. And yeah, guys, that's another video. I love you. I appreciate you. And until next time, I'll see you. Cats, they don't want to say anything to you, so we'll catch you on the next one. Love you. Goodbye. So this is it right here. It's what I've just spent my whole life doing, working hard for. Then a nice little office setting here. I gotta rip all this crap out. Probably take me a long time, but it's all right. Rip all this stuff out, and we're gonna make her into a restaurant. People are gonna come here to eat some pizza and some food. It's no big deal. You can't see back there, but that's it, man. This is a new location for Pizzeria Scotty. That motherfucker up, man.
All right, here we go.
Yep, this is the first hole in new Pizzeria Scotty.
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. Yeah, right. Candid camera, right?
Yep.
Hey,
Ooh,
all right.
All right, let's see it.
Get a good close up in on that guy.
Look at that. Should sign it.